Hey folks, welcome to the second week of September's art journaling video. Sorry that this is going up a little bit late. I was under the weather at the beginning of this week and I kept choking while I was trying to record some sound, and that probably would not have been awesome on either my part or your part if you're affected by things like that. So this week we are going to take last week's lesson kind of up a notch, and we're going to do some more mark making, but this time we're going to add color and we're going to make some really cool marks with stencils and then kind of emphasize those. So I've got cans and watercolor paper down. I use my Simply Simmons brush and I got some Liquitex gesso all over that. Now I've got some different paints. I think 3 of these colors will end up being from Blick and 1 of them will be from Liquitex. I am by no means a paint snob. I like all paints, every paint, this paint, that paint. I find that different paints work better for different things. Sometimes I use heavy body, sometimes soft body, sometimes as thin as craft paint. I use high flows. I use all paints. Right now I am working with heavy bodies on this page. You could see that kind of red color came from the Liquitex line. The gray, the excuse me, the gray, the magenta, the pinkish one, and the Titan Buff. They all came from Blick, and I'm just getting those colors down, kind of putting down some color swatches, scribbles, scrapes, just wherever I'm putting them down. I did get out a baby wipe a little bit to help kind of make it a little less crazy. It was looking a bit crazy to me, but it's just one step. You can or can't do it. You can or you don't have to. Here's the really cool part in the lesson that I was showing the local art journaling gals. I put a stencil down, and while the paint was still wet, I'm using baby wipes to remove that color from that area. So I am also, it's all like on the left side and the bottom left corner, but then I also took some from the middle just so that it wasn't all pattern heavy on the left. Very, very cool technique. I think that was a Crafter's Workshop stencil, and then this is an Unwild Studio stencil. Some little petals, and it's very cool. It's a much smaller shape, but very fun, repetitive. You can see when I pull up the stencil, some of the paint does come up. That's because the paint is really starting to dry. We live in the desert. I live in Las Vegas, and this stuff happens super, super quick. Everything dries. We don't have as much work time here as other places. But in the end, I actually really liked the effect because it also helped me add back in some white space from all of this like intense kind of color that was happening. I'm using a Stabilo pencil now, a Mark-Sol, and a paintbrush with some water to activate that Mark-Sol. I just went around the outside of those shapes, and I wasn't very particular about how well I went around them or how much I followed the shape. I'm really kind of just having some fun here. So I did think that some of those areas of the Stabilo were a little dark, so I just picked it up with some water, or with a wet wipe, and we're good to go. The thing to remember here is that Stabilo will always be water reactive, so even if we keep layering on top of it, if I smear some paint over it, the Stabilo is going to smear. If I add any type of mist, then that Stabilo is going to activate in the mist and kind of start to wick out. So just keep that in mind. I used the Stabilo maybe a little early here, but that's all right. This is some high flow golden, and this is the gray shading, and it is awesome. It adds the perfect amount of grunginess to my page. I do love color, but I don't use it well, I don't think. So I always need to add in some black and some white, some gray. I feel like personally that I just work better with neutrals and a splash of color. So because I put down so much color on this page, I knew that for my sake I needed to add some neutral back in. So that's exactly what we're doing. I'm using that high flow acrylic. And the high flow is a bit different than fluid acrylics. High flow is even thinner than fluid acrylics, and it's really kind of just meant for airbrushing. I shouldn't say it's meant for airbrushing. It just works really great with airbrushes. And so it also is kind of cool when you work with it, whether you're on a canvas or in your art journal or whatever, because it's very similar to ink in the way it runs and moves and kind of spreads around. And then once it's dry, it's completely permanent. And there are acrylic inks out there as well. This is just a nice paint to have on hand. And then, of course, it works with all of the Golden line and other acrylic products, and comes in a good variety of colors. It's just very fluid, even more fluid than fluid acrylic, because fluid acrylic still has a bit of thickness to it, where this, like I mentioned earlier, is just a bit more ink-like with how thin it is. And it was perfect for some grunginess. I added it in the corners, and I kind of spread it out and made a gradient out of it. It just turned out really, really great. Did a bit of dripping, and you kind of saw that. I just drug the paint across the top and then added some water. Now I've got out my black this is Archival ink by Ranger. It isn't a distressed pad. It's the black soot color. I just refilled an empty pad with a black soot Archival reinker. And that stamp is by American Crafts, I think, that roller stamp. And I picked that up at Tuesday Morning, so I don't think American Crafts makes it anymore, but check out Tuesday Morning. You should be able to get it. Oh, okay, and then this, I was kind of trying to figure out what I did here, but that is just some more gesso, and I'm kind of going back in and making those. I needed more white space, so I'm making those petal shapes from the Umwell Studio stencil a bit more prominent. I'm not necessarily covering anything up or trying to do anything specific with it. I just want it to be more white. And I am using my fingers and the gesso to create some dots here. It's kind of funny. Like, I always try to practice this technique, and I know that practicing to make dots sounds kind of weird, but my dots are never random enough for me. They always seem very deliberate. I'm really impressed by what some other people can get with their fingers and dots, but just taking a quick minute there. I went over each of them 2 or 3 times so that they're super opaque. And heat that or let that dry. Sometimes in my videos, you guys, you'll be like, oh, she just worked on that, but now it's dry. A lot of times I'll pause the video and walk away while things dry, or I'll pause the video and then dry it. And here I'm just using a number 2 pencil. It's got a medium hardness graphite inside of it. I've circled the circles, and then I'm smearing it a little bit with my finger. And that's it. So a great background. Feel free, please, to kind of test these techniques out and or build upon them. I'm excited to see what you do. Thanks so much for joining me again, and I will see you soon with another video.